Before you judge me, let me tell you how I got here. In the gleaming banquet hall I paid for, wearing the dress I stitched by hand, I was about to watch my only son start his new life. Every petal, every glass of champagne, every velvet chair. Mine. Then, microphone in hand, my son's wife smiled and said it. "We're keeping the party young tonight. Some guests should head out early." She looked right at me, and the crowd laughed with her. When they kicked me out of their wedding party, they had no idea they were throwing away the only thing keeping them afloat. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply walked out into the night, and what came next, they never saw coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. Before the humiliation, before everything changed, my life was simple and full of purpose. My name is Catherine Morgan, Cate to the few who truly know me. I spent 40 years among the shelves of Millfield Public Library, my identity wrapped in the gentle rhythm of due dates and reference questions. But my most important title was always Drew's mom. I raised my son alone after James died in a construction accident when Drew was just 4. His small hand in mine at the funeral is a memory etched into my heart, the way his fingers gripped mine so tightly, as if afraid I might disappear too. We survived on my librarian's salary, government cheese, and thrift store treasures made magical through storytelling. Halloween costumes stitched from remnant fabric, Christmas presents wrapped in newspaper comics, bedtime stories about knights and dragons pulled from the shelves where I worked. "Mom, look! I'm a real dinosaur," Drew had exclaimed at age 7, parading around our tiny kitchen in the T-Rex costume I'd stayed up 3 nights to complete. Green felt scales glued one by one while he slept. I never had much, but I made sure Drew had enough. When he needed a computer for high school, I took on evening shifts shelving books. When college acceptance letters arrived, I cashed out the life insurance policy I'd been saving for retirement. These weren't sacrifices. They were investments in the beautiful person my son was becoming. Drew graduated with honors, found work at a marketing firm in the city, and met Sienna at a company retreat. She was beautiful, ambitious, social media savvy. Their relationship moved quickly. "Mom, I'm getting married," Drew announced last Christmas, Sienna's diamond ring catching the light from our modest tree. "We want a summer wedding." "That's wonderful, honey," I said, hugging them both while my mind raced to the savings bond I'd been nurturing for 20 years. It wasn't much, $18,000, but it would help give them a beautiful start. "We're thinking about having it at the Millfield Community Center," Drew said. "Keep it local, you know." "Oh." Sienna's laugh was like wind chimes, pretty but hollow. "That's just one option we're considering. There's also that gorgeous converted barn in Lakeside. Much better aesthetic for our photos." I noticed the way Drew's eyes shifted when she mentioned aesthetic, how he seemed to shrink slightly. "The community center is nice," I offered. "Vernon Ellis might give us a discount since I've known him forever." "We don't need discounts," Sienna said quickly. "We want everything perfect, premium." "Of course," I nodded, feeling the first hint of being out of step with their vision. "I have some savings I'd like to contribute. It's not a fortune, but—" "Mom, you don't have to," Drew began. "That would be amazing," Sienna interrupted, suddenly interested. "Every little bit helps create the day we're dreaming of." Later, as I wrote the first check for their venue deposit, $5,000 to the Lakeside barn, I told myself that all mothers feel a little sidelined during wedding planning. It was natural, normal. Drew deserved his happiness, and if Sienna made him happy, that was enough for me. My friend Marla stopped by that evening as I was reviewing my finances, calculating how much I could give without endangering my modest retirement. "You're giving them everything, aren't you?" she asked, eyeing the checkbook and calculator. "Not everything," I said. "Just enough to help." "And what are they giving you?" Her question hung in the air between us. "They're including me in their day," I replied, the answer sounding hollow even to my own ears. "That's enough." But as the weeks passed and more checks were written, $3,000 for the photographer, $7,000 for the caterer. I noticed how planning meetings happened without my input, how decisions were made, and I was simply informed of the costs, how Sienna's mother, Linda, would exchange glances with her daughter whenever I made a suggestion. "We're going for something more modern," became the refrain whenever I offered an idea. Still, I told myself it would be worth it to see Drew happy, to have a place, however small, at my only child's wedding. After all, isn't that what mothers do? Give without expecting return? I never imagined there would come a point where giving wasn't enough, where love without respect would finally break something in me that could never be repaired. As spring bloomed and summer approached, the wedding planning intensified. My checkbook thinned while the guest list grew. People Drew had never mentioned, Sienna's online followers, social media contacts she insisted were crucial for their brand. "Brand?" I'd asked Drew during one of our increasingly rare solo coffee dates. "What brand?" "Sienna's building an influencer platform," he explained, checking his phone as he spoke. "The wedding is going to be a launching point. She already has sponsorships lined up. The cake, the flowers, even the bridesmaid dresses." "That sounds commercial." I chose my words carefully, not wanting to seem old-fashioned. "It's how things work now, Mom. It's networking, building our future." His tone held that familiar edge, the one that emerged whenever I failed to understand their modern vision. 3 days later, I received a text inviting me to a wedding aesthetic planning brunch at Lakeside Barn. The venue we'd secured with my deposit shimmered in the June sunshine as I arrived, wearing my best blouse and the pearl earrings James had given me for our 10th anniversary. Inside, long tables were arranged in a U-shape, decorated with fresh flowers and mimosa glasses. I searched for my place card among the elegant calligraphy names, but found nothing marking my spot. "Cate, you made it!" Sienna approached in a flowing white sundress, camera-ready makeup on her face despite the early hour. Her mother Linda trailed behind, both women air-kissing my cheeks without making contact. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "Where should I sit?" "Oh." Sienna's eyes widened slightly. "We're actually doing a specific seating arrangement for the social content. Maybe you could sit." Her gaze drifted to a small table near the door, separated from the main arrangement. Something in my expression must have registered because she quickly added, "It's just for the photos, you know. We're trying to create a certain aesthetic." "I see." I moved toward the isolated table, watching as younger, more stylish guests arrived and were warmly welcomed into the main seating area. The event coordinator, a woman named Jessa with a clipboard and an earpiece, began directing people. "If everyone could take their places, we'll start with a champagne toast and then move into the vision boarding session." Waitstaff circulated, filling glasses and distributing elegant small plates. No one approached my table. Linda stood, tapping her glass. "Welcome to our special pre-wedding celebration. Sienna and Drew are creating not just a marriage, but a moment, a visual story we're all part of." Murmurs of approval circled the room. I sipped water from the single glass I'd been provided, watching my son's arm draped around Sienna's waist, her head on his shoulder as phones emerged to capture the moment. "We've curated every detail of this journey," Linda continued, "from the intentional color palette to the carefully selected guest list for each event. More photos, more champagne." I remained at my separate table, increasingly aware of my invisibility. When the vision boarding began, guests selecting magazine cutouts to create collages representing their wishes for the couple, no materials were brought to me. I sat with empty hands while laughter and creativity flowed around me. "Mom." Drew finally approached, his expression a mix of discomfort and apology. "Are you okay over here?" "I'm fine," I said, though we both knew it wasn't true. "Is there something I should be doing?" "Sienna just thought," he lowered his voice, "that for the photos, it might be better to have a certain look to the group. You know, for her social media." The words hung between us, their meaning unmistakable. I didn't fit the look. "I understand," I said, not understanding at all how my son could allow this. Before he could respond, Sienna clinked her glass again. The room quieted as she stood, radiant in the center of attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming today and helping us craft our perfect vision. This is such a special group." Her gaze swept the main tables, deliberately skipping over my corner. "We're really focusing on creating a youthful, forward-looking aesthetic for both the wedding and our media presence afterward." Murmurs of approval. "Which reminds me," she continued, her voice carrying clearly across the room, "for tonight's rehearsal dinner, we're keeping the party young and vibrant. Some guests might want to head out early, after the main course." Her eyes found mine, holding them deliberately as she spoke. "Especially those who might not be up for the energetic portion of the evening." Laughter rippled through the room. Linda nodded approvingly. Drew studied his shoes. The humiliation burned through me like acid, not because of Sienna's words, but because of Drew's silence. My son, who I'd raised to stand up for others, to be kind, to value character over appearance, said nothing as his future wife publicly suggested his mother was too old to belong at his wedding events. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a realization that had been forming for months. The love I'd given unconditionally all these years had become one-directional. I had become an ATM with a heartbeat, valued for my financial contributions but not my presence. With steady hands, I gathered my purse. No tears, no scene. Just the quiet dignity I'd carried through widowhood, through struggle, through years of putting my child before myself. "Excuse me," I said to no one in particular, and walked out of the barn into the summer morning. No one called after me. No one followed. In the parking lot, I sat in my 12-year-old Honda and stared at the dashboard where a small photo of Drew at his college graduation was clipped to the visor. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. "How's the fancy brunch?" I responded simply. "I'm coming over. I need to talk." As I drove away from Lakeside Barn, I passed Vernon Ellis walking toward the community center next door. He waved and I managed a small wave back. Vernon had known me for 30 years, had watched Drew grow up coming to the library, had offered us a generous discount on his venue before Sienna decided it wasn't premium enough. Vernon, who had shaken his head when I told him we'd chosen Lakeside instead. "Those folks charge triple for half the heart," he'd said. "But it's your money, Cate. My money, my savings, my decades of careful planning and sacrifice, now funding a celebration where I was explicitly unwelcome." By the time I reached Marla's small bungalow across town, the shock had hardened into something else. A quiet, cold clarity I'd never experienced before. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Marla opened her door before I could knock, one look at my face telling her everything. What happened? They don't want me there, I said simply. Any of it. They just want what I can pay for. She pulled me inside, putting on the kettle for tea as I recounted the morning's events. When I finished, she sat across from me, her nurse's eyes assessing more than just my words. "And what are you going to do about it?" she asked finally. For the first time that day, I smiled. Something I should have done months ago. I pulled out my phone and began scrolling through my banking app, looking for the payment records for everything I'd funded for Drew and Sienna's perfect, curated, influencer-ready wedding. Every vendor, every deposit, every contract with my name on it. "Are you sure?" Marla asked, watching me type notes. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. "It's time they learned there's a cost to treating people as props instead of family. And I don't mean a financial one." Marla watched as I pulled up the wedding vendor contracts on my phone. Each one listed my name, my contact information, my payment details. In the eyes of these businesses, I wasn't the awkward mother who didn't fit the aesthetic. I was the client. "First, the venue," I said, finding the number for Lakeside Barn. My hand trembled slightly, but my voice remained steady when the manager answered. "Hello, this is Catherine Morgan. I need to discuss the wedding scheduled for July 15th, the one I've been paying for." The manager, a young woman named Alyssa, responded with practiced cheerfulness. "Of course, Mrs. Morgan. What can I help you with today?" "I'm canceling my financial participation," I said plainly. "I will not be covering any further costs, and I need to know my options regarding the deposits already made." A long pause. I'll need to transfer you to our contracts manager. This is unusual." 2 transfers and 15 minutes later, I had my answer. The initial deposit was non-refundable, but without the final payment due next week, the venue would consider the contract void and reopen the date for booking. "So, you'll inform the couple?" the contracts manager asked. "No," I said. "I believe that responsibility falls to you, as the business. My understanding is that if payment isn't received by the deadline, you'll reach out to discuss alternatives." "That's correct, but..." "Then that's how we'll proceed." Marla handed me a fresh cup of tea when I ended the call. "One down," she said. "How many to go?" "Caterer, photographer, florist, rental company." I sipped the tea, the warmth steadying my nerves. "About 8 calls in total." "And you're absolutely sure about this?" I looked at my oldest friend, the woman who'd held my hand at James's funeral, who'd watched Drew when I worked late shifts, who'd never once treated me as less than. "Would you let someone treat you the way they treated me today?" "Hell no," she replied without hesitation. "I'd have made a scene right then and there. You're showing more restraint than I would." "I don't want a scene," I said. "I just want them to understand that respect matters, that I matter." By noon, I had spoken with every vendor. Some were sympathetic, others purely businesslike. But the outcome was consistent. Without my payments, the lavish wedding Sienna had planned would not happen as envisioned. The last call was to Vernon Ellis at the Millfield Community Center. "Cate?" His gruff voice brightened when he recognized mine. "How are you? Saw you driving past earlier." "I've been better, Vernon," I admitted. "I'm calling because I need some advice." I explained the situation in simple terms, without villainizing Drew or Sienna. Just the facts. Public humiliation, financial exploitation, my decision to withdraw support. Vernon listened without interrupting, then cleared his throat. Well, that's a tough spot. But you know what my father always said? People who pay deserve a say. You've been paying without getting any say. That ain't right. Exactly, I said, feeling validated for the first time that day. For what it's worth, he continued, my venue's still available that weekend. Nobody wants a July wedding in a place without the right aesthetic for their Instagram. He chuckled. But we've got heart, air conditioning, and reasonable prices. I appreciate that, Vernon, but I don't think they'll be speaking to me once this all unfolds. Their loss, he said simply. You're worth 10 of those social media types, Cate Morgan. After hanging up, I checked my phone for messages from Drew or Sienna. Nothing. They hadn't even noticed I was gone from the brunch. Or if they had, they hadn't cared enough to check on me. What now? Marla asked, settling onto her porch swing beside me. Now, I said. We wait. We didn't wait long. Around 3 o'clock, my phone lit up with Sienna's name. I let it ring through to voicemail. Then Drew called. Then Linda. Then Sienna again. The voicemails escalated from confused to panicked to angry. Cate, this is Linda. There seems to be some mistake with the venue payment. Please call us back immediately. Mom, what's going on? The venue manager says you canceled the account. Please call me. This is completely unacceptable, Cate. You can't just pull funding because your feelings got hurt. Call me back right now. Sienna's voice had lost all its practiced polish. Marla raised an eyebrow as we listened to the messages. Seems they finally noticed you exist. Only when their plans started falling apart, I observed. By evening, I had 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails. I sent Drew a simple text. I'm safe and well. I need some time. Please respect that. His response was immediate. Mom, what do we do? Whatever it is, I'm sorry. Please just call the vendors back. We can talk about this. I turned off my phone and spent the night at Marla's, sleeping more soundly than I had in months. The next morning, I returned home to find Drew's car in my driveway and my son sitting on my front steps, his face haggard from lack of sleep. Mom. He stood when he saw me. What's happening? Everything's falling apart. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. They're all saying the contract's a void without your payment. I unlocked my door and gestured for him to follow me inside. The small house where I'd raised him was unchanged. Bookshelves lining the walls, faded furniture arranged for comfort rather than style, family photos capturing genuine moments rather than carefully staged poses. Would you like some coffee? I asked, moving to the kitchen as if this were any normal visit. Mom, please. His voice cracked. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Sienna is having a meltdown. Her mother is threatening to call a lawyer. I don't understand what happened. I turned to face my son, the boy I'd loved from the moment I knew he existed, the young man I'd sacrificed for without hesitation, the adult who had stood silent while I was humiliated. What happened at the brunch yesterday, Drew? He blinked, confusion crossing his features. What's the brunch? You left early. We thought you had an appointment or something. The casual dismissal of my absence confirmed everything. No one noticed until the money stopped flowing, I said softly. That's quite telling, don't you think? Understanding dawned in his eyes. Is this about what Sienna said? About keeping the party young? Mom, she didn't mean anything by it. She looked directly at me, Drew. Everyone laughed. You said nothing. It was just a joke. Was it funny? I interrupted, my voice steady. Was it funny to suggest your mother isn't welcome at your wedding events? Was it amusing to seat me away from everyone else? Was it hilarious to exclude me from everything except the invoices? Drew's face flushed. You're overreacting. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I poured myself coffee, not offering him any. For months, I've been nothing but a checkbook to you and Sienna. I've been tolerated, not welcomed, sidelined, not included. Yesterday just made it explicit. So you're punishing us? Ruining our wedding because your feelings got hurt? I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm simply choosing not to fund my own erasure anymore. If my presence isn't valued, neither is my money. Drew ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so like his father, it made my heart ache. What do you want from me, Mom? An apology. Fine, I'm sorry. We're sorry. Just please call the vendors back. This isn't about the money, Drew. It's about respect, about seeing me as a person, not a resource, about standing up for your mother when she's being publicly humiliated. He stared at me, and for a moment I glimpsed something in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of how far he'd strayed from the values I'd raised him with. Then his phone buzzed. Sienna's name flashed on the screen, and just like that, the moment was gone. I have to take this, he said, stepping onto the porch. Through the window, I watched his shoulders tense as he listened to whatever Sienna was saying. When he returned, his expression had hardened. I need to go, he said stiffly. Sienna's meeting with another venue. We'll figure this out ourselves. I'm sure you will, I replied, not unkindly. You're resourceful. You always have been. As he reached the door, he turned back. I don't understand how you could do this to me. The question hung in the air between us, so telling in its self-focus, so revealing in its lack of self-awareness. I could ask you the same thing, I said quietly. Goodbye, Drew. After he left, I sat alone in my kitchen, surrounded by memories of a little boy who once valued kindness over status, authenticity over appearances. A boy who became a man I no longer recognized. The pain was sharp but clean, like setting a broken bone that had been healing wrong. Whatever came next would hurt, but at least it would be honest. I spent the afternoon in my garden, finding solace in the simple act of tending to living things. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, but I left it inside. The roses needed pruning, the tomatoes staking, the herbs harvesting, tangible tasks with visible results. Around 4 o'clock, Marla appeared at my garden gate, a bottle of wine in one hand and 2 glasses in the other. Thought you might need this, she said, settling onto my weathered garden bench. Word is spreading around town. I wiped soil from my hands. What word is that? That Catherine Morgan finally stood up for herself. She poured 2 generous glasses. Vernon Ellis is telling anyone who will listen that Sienna and her mother tried to rent the community center this morning at a discount, claiming hardship. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. What did Vernon say? That his rates suddenly tripled. Marla handed me a glass. For them, specifically. We sat in companionable silence, watching bees navigate between lavender blooms. The simple beauty of my small garden stood in stark contrast to the elaborate, Instagram-ready vision Sienna had been creating. Have you checked your phone? Marla finally asked. Not since Drew left. Maybe you should. Not to cave, she added quickly, but to know what you're dealing with. Inside, I found 37 missed calls, 15 voicemails, and 22 text messages. Most were from Drew and Sienna, but there were also calls from Linda and even a few from Sienna's bridesmaids. The latest text from Drew caught my attention. Mom, please. We're meeting at your house tonight at 7. Just hear us out. They're coming here, I told Marla. Tonight. She raised an eyebrow. All of them? Apparently. Want me to stay? Moral support. I considered it, then shook my head. I need to handle this myself. Call me after, she insisted, hugging me before leaving. No matter how late. At precisely 7, a caravan of cars pulled up to my modest home. Drew, Sienna, Linda, and 2 women I recognized as Sienna's bridesmaids filed onto my small porch. I opened the door before they could knock. Come in, I said, my librarian's calm firmly in place. I've made coffee. They entered awkwardly, these people who had planned a wedding without me, but now couldn't proceed without my money. The living room that had seemed too small for Sienna during previous visits now felt overcrowded with tension. Cate, Linda began, her voice artificially sweet. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted. I was deliberately excluded and publicly humiliated. I've simply chosen not to finance my own mistreatment any longer. That's a bit dramatic, Sienna said, her social media smile nowhere in sight. So I made one comment about keeping the party young. It was a joke. Was the separate table at the brunch a joke too? The missing place card, the way no one noticed when I left. I looked directly at Drew. The way my son said nothing while I was being mocked? Drew flushed but remained silent. Look. Linda leaned forward, all pretense of pleasantness gone. We have a wedding in 3 weeks. Guests have made travel arrangements. Sienna's sponsors are expecting content. You can't just pull the rug out because of some perceived slight. I can, I countered evenly. And I have. This is extortion, Sienna snapped. You're holding our wedding hostage. No, I said. I'm choosing where my money goes. There's a difference. What do you want, Mom? Drew finally spoke, his voice tired. Just tell us what you want, and we'll do it. The question hung in the air, so revealing in its transactional nature. Not, I'm sorry for how we treated you, or I understand why you're hurt. Just what will it take to get your money back? I wanted to be treated with basic respect, I said simply. I wanted my son to stand up for me. I wanted to be valued for more than my checkbook. But you can't retroactively create respect when it wasn't there to begin with. So that's it? Sienna's voice rose. You're just canceling our wedding because you're feeling petty. I'm not canceling anything. You can still have a wedding, just not the one my money was paying for. Be reasonable, Cate, Linda interjected. We can make adjustments. You can be seated at the family table. We'll make sure you're included in photos. So I'm being offered what should have been automatically mine. I shook my head. That's not how respect works. The bridesmaids exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was clearly not the quick financial resolution they'd anticipated. Drew stood abruptly. Can we talk privately, Mom? Just us? I nodded, leading him to the kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd made his school lunches, treated his childhood fevers, celebrated his accomplishments. Why are you doing this? He asked, voice low. You know how important this wedding is for Sienna's career, for our future. That's exactly why, Drew. This wedding stopped being about your marriage and became about Sienna's brand a long time ago. It stopped being about family the moment your fiancé decided I didn't fit the aesthetic. She didn't mean... Yes, she did. I cut him off. And you let her. That's what hurts the most. He leaned against the counter, suddenly looking very young. I didn't know what to say. Everyone was watching. You say, that's my mother you're talking about. You say, She belongs here more than anyone. You say something, anything, that shows I matter to you. You do matter, he insisted. But Sienna will always come first. I understand that. She's your future wife, and that's as it should be. But that doesn't mean I should be treated as an embarrassment or an ATM. What do you want me to do? Desperation edged his voice. We can't afford this wedding without you. Everything will fall apart. Maybe it should, I said gently. Maybe you need to build something real, rather than something for show. Sienna won't accept that. Then perhaps that tells you something important about the woman you're marrying. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's not fair. I raised you to value character over appearance, kindness over status. Somewhere along the way you forgot that. I'm just reminding you. From the living room, Sienna's voice carried clearly. This is ridiculous. We should just sue her for the money. Drew winced. She doesn't mean it. She's just upset. She means it, I said. And that's the problem. Her priorities aren't yours. At least not the you I raised. So what happens now? I placed my hand on his cheek. This man who was still my son despite everything. That's up to you. You can have a smaller wedding within your actual budget. You can postpone until you've saved enough. Or you can continue trying to force me to fund something that has become toxic. Mom, I love you, Drew. I always will. But I've spent my entire life putting you first, sometimes at the expense of my own dignity. I can't do that anymore. A text alert pinged on his phone. Sienna, of course, always demanding his immediate attention. I have to go, he said, reading the message with a frown. They're all waiting. I know, I replied, unsurprised. They always will be. We returned to the living room, where Sienna paced impatiently. Well? She demanded. Drew looked at me, then at his fiancée, caught between worlds. Mom's not changing her mind. This is unbelievable, Sienna spat. Your mother is sabotaging our wedding, and you're just accepting it? She has the right to decide where her money goes, he replied, a small but significant shift from his earlier position. We'll have to figure something else out. As they gathered their purses and phones, preparing to leave with their mission unfulfilled, Linda turned to me. You'll regret this, Cate. You're going to lose your son over money. No, I corrected her. If I lose him, it will be over dignity. There's a difference. After they left, the house settled into silence around me. Not the lonely silence I'd feared, but a peaceful one, filled with the quiet satisfaction of finally standing my ground. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. How did it go? They came. They didn't listen. They left, I replied. But I'm okay. And for the first time in months, I truly was. The following week unfolded like a strange dream. I returned to my normal routines, gardening in the morning, reading in the afternoon, occasional coffee with friends. But against the backdrop of increasingly frantic wedding drama playing out across town, Marla kept me updated on the rumors swirling through Millfield. The florist had pulled out entirely after Sienna threw a tantrum in their shop. The photographer had agreed to a scaled-down package at full price. 3 different venues had declined to book them on short notice. Vernon says they're scrambling to put together something at Linda's backyard, Marla reported over our Thursday coffee. Half the guest list has been cut. The influencer sponsors are getting nervous. I'm not gloating, I said, though part of me felt a quiet vindication. I just hope Drew is learning something from all this. Speaking of Drew, Marla nodded toward the cafe window. Incoming. My son stood outside, hands in his pockets, looking hesitant in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. When our eyes met through the glass, he gave a small wave. "I should go." Marla gathered her purse. "This looks private." I squeezed her hand gratefully. "I'll call you later." Drew slid into the chair Marla had vacated, ordering coffee when the waitress came by. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes and tension in his shoulders. "Hi, Mom," he said simply. "Hello, Drew." I kept my tone neutral. "How are you?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Honestly, everything's a mess. The wedding, the relationship, my head, all of it." "I'm sorry to hear that." And I was, despite everything. No mother wants to see her child suffering. "Are you?" He met my eyes directly. I'm sorry you're hurting," I clarified. "I'm not sorry I stopped paying for my own mistreatment." He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about character and appearances, about how I stood there while Sienna disrespected you." "And?" I prompted when he fell silent. "And you were right." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I should have spoken up. I should have noticed how you were being treated all along. I just got caught up in the life Sienna was painting for us. The connections, the social media opportunities, the elevated lifestyle." "It's seductive," I acknowledged. "Being made to feel special, chosen for something bigger." "But it's not real," he said, surprising me. "None of it is. The followers, the sponsors, the perfectly curated photos. It's all performance." His coffee arrived and he stared into the cup as if it held answers. "Sienna and I had a huge fight last night," he continued. "About the wedding, but really about everything. She said I had to choose. Either find a way to get your money back or..." He trailed off. "Or what?" I asked gently. "Or she'd reconsider whether I was brand compatible after all." The bitterness in his voice was new. Those were her exact words. Brand compatible. Like I'm a product, not a person. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Being reduced to your utility rather than valued for your humanity. Exactly what I had experienced. "What did you say?" I asked. I asked her if she would still want to marry me if we had to start from scratch. No sponsored wedding, no influencer launch. Just us building a life together like regular people. He looked up, a sad smile touching his lips. She couldn't answer. The pain in his eyes was real, but so was the clarity. For perhaps the first time, Drew was seeing his relationship without the filter of aspiration and performance. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be. It's better to know now than after we're married." He sipped his coffee. "Anyway, the wedding's officially postponed. We sent out notices yesterday." "And your relationship?" "Uncertain," he admitted. "We're taking space, according to Sienna's latest Instagram post. Apparently, her followers love relationship drama. Great for engagement." The cynicism in his voice was so unlike the optimistic boy I'd raised. I reached across the table to take his hand. "You deserve someone who sees you, Drew. Not your potential as content, not your utility as a prop in their story. You, as the thoughtful, kind person you've always been." "Have I been, though?" he asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "Kind, I mean. Look how I treated you." "We all lose our way sometimes," I said. "The important thing is finding our way back." We talked for another hour, more openly than we had in years, about his job, which he admitted he didn't love, about my retirement, which was more financially stable than he'd realized, about memories of his father, stories I hadn't shared because they hadn't seemed to fit the sleek, upwardly mobile image Drew had been cultivating. As we prepared to leave, Drew hesitated. "There's something else I wanted to ask you about. The savings bond you cashed out for the wedding. That was your retirement safety net, wasn't it?" I shrugged. "Part of it. I have other investments." "But that was over $18,000. Money you'd been saving for decades." "It was meant for something important," I said, "but not like this." His expression was solemn. "Not for a wedding where the mother of the groom was seated by the garbage cans." The brutal honesty of his statement hung between us, a truth finally acknowledged. "What will you do now?" I asked. "About the money already spent? The deposits lost?" "Start over," he said simply. "Get a better grip on my priorities. Figure out who I am without Sienna's filter and followers. And if she comes back? If she decides you're brand compatible after all?" He considered this. "I'm not sure that matters to me anymore." As we parted outside the cafe, Drew hugged me, not the perfunctory embrace of recent years, but something real and solid, like the hugs he'd given as a child. "I love you, Mom," he said. "I'm sorry I forgot to show it." "I love you too," I replied. "Always have. Always will." I watched him walk away, shoulders straighter than when he'd arrived despite the weight of a cancelled wedding and a relationship in limbo. There was pain in his future, I knew. Breakups were never easy, even when necessary. But there was also possibility, the chance to rebuild on a foundation of authenticity rather than appearance. Back home, I found a letter in my mailbox from Vernon Ellis. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a brief note. "Cate, Sienna's mother tried to book my venue at a reduced rate, claiming financial hardship. I declined, but they eventually paid my full fee for a rush booking. Enclosed is the markup I charged them. Seemed only fair you should have it since it was your stand that made it possible. Use it for something that brings you joy. You've earned it. Vernon." I smiled, tucking the check into my desk drawer. Not to cash. I had no interest in profiting from the situation. But to keep as a reminder that standing up for yourself ripples outward in unexpected ways. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. "How did it go with Drew?" "Better than I expected," I replied. "I think he's finding his way back to himself." "And you?" she asked. "Are you okay with how everything turned out?" I looked around my modest living room, at the books that had kept me company through widowhood, the photos of a life built on substance rather than show, the garden visible through my window that grew more beautiful each year through patient tending. "More than okay," I texted back. "I'm at peace." 3 months passed, each day a gentle reminder that life continues to unfold in its own rhythm, regardless of cancelled weddings or relationship dramas. The summer heat gave way to autumn crispness, and my garden shifted from tomatoes and basil to pumpkins and late-blooming chrysanthemums. Drew and Sienna's relationship ended officially 2 weeks after our cafe conversation. She announced it on her social media platforms with a carefully crafted post about growth journeys and conscious uncoupling, phrases that made Marla snort when I showed her. "At least she got content out of it," Marla remarked dryly. Drew moved out of their shared apartment into a smaller place closer to Millfield. He started coming by for Sunday dinners, not every week, but often enough that we were rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. "I've been thinking about changing careers," he told me one evening as we washed dishes side by side. "Marketing isn't what I thought it would be." "What would you rather do?" I asked, passing him a plate to dry. "Remember how I used to volunteer at the library with you, helping with the children's reading program?" I nodded, warmth spreading through me at the memory of my teenage son, sitting patiently with youngsters struggling through picture books. The elementary school has an opening for a media specialist. Books, technology, teaching kids to love reading. His eyes held an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in years. The pay is a lot less than I make now, but it would mean something. I finished for him. Exactly. His smile was genuine, unperformed. The following week, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting was distinctly Linda's, elegant with flourishes on the capital letters. I opened it at my kitchen table, curious rather than anxious. Inside was a single page of expensive stationery. Cate. I've struggled with whether to write this letter, but recent events have forced me to reconsider many things I once took for granted. Sienna's father left us last month. After 30 years of marriage, he announced he'd been having an affair with his assistant and wanted a divorce. The parallels to your situation have not escaped me. Being suddenly discarded by someone whose life you helped build. I owe you an apology. My behavior during the wedding planning was inexcusable. I allowed my insecurities about our social standing to override basic human decency. I encouraged Sienna's worst instincts about image and status because I believed that was how she would succeed in life. I was wrong. Seeing my daughter's relationship collapse under the weight of appearances over substance has been a painful but necessary lesson. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your stand made at least one person reconsider their values. With respect and regret, Linda Carter. I reread the letter twice, surprised by the genuine reflection it contained. While it didn't erase the hurt, it offered something I hadn't expected. Recognition that standing up for myself had created ripples of awareness beyond my own situation. I showed the letter to Marla on our weekly walk through Millfield Park. "Well, I'll be damned," she said after reading it. "People can change." "Sometimes it takes losing something to see what matters," I replied, thinking of my own journey. "Speaking of change," Marla gestured ahead where Vernon Ellis was overseeing the installation of a new sign outside the community center. "Vernon's big renovation is finally happening." We approached as workers mounted a beautiful wooden sign reading, "Millfield Community Arts and Learning Center." "Looks wonderful, Vernon," I called out. He turned, beaming with pride. "Cate, just the person I wanted to see." He waved us closer. "What do you think? The expansion starts next week. New library section, art studio, community kitchen." "It's fantastic," I said sincerely. "The town has needed this for years." "Couldn't have done it without donors," he said, giving me a meaningful look. "Anonymous ones included." Marla raised an eyebrow at me. "Anonymous, huh?" I shrugged. Vernon's pointed glance told me he knew exactly what I'd done with the wedding savings I'd reclaimed. Donated it to his community center expansion with the stipulation that a portion be used for a children's literacy program. Not out of spite or as a grand gesture, but because it felt right to transform what had been earmarked for an elaborate show into something with lasting community value. "You know," Vernon continued, "we're looking for someone to run the new library section. Someone with experience. Someone who understands this community." "I'm retired, Vernon," I reminded him. "Part-time," he countered. 10 hours a week, just enough to get us organized." The offer surprised me. I'd been a librarian for 4 decades, but had assumed that chapter of my life was closed. The idea of shelving books again, of helping connect people with stories, sent an unexpected thrill through me. "I'll think about it," I promised. As Marla and I continued our walk, she nudged my shoulder. "You're going to say yes, aren't you?" "Maybe." I admitted. It would be nice to be useful again. You've never stopped being useful, Cate. You just stopped being used. There's a difference. Her words stayed with me as I returned home to find Drew's car in my driveway. He was kneeling in my garden, carefully harvesting the last of the season's vegetables. "Thought I'd get these before the frost," he explained, holding up a basket of green tomatoes. "We can make your famous fried green tomatoes." "Perfect," I said, warmth spreading through me at this simple thoughtfulness. In the kitchen, we worked together comfortably, the silence between us no longer tense but companionable. Drew dredged tomato slices in cornmeal while I heated oil in the cast-iron skillet that had belonged to my mother. "I got the job," he said suddenly, "at the elementary school. I start next month." "Drew, that's wonderful news." "It feels right," he said, a quiet confidence in his voice that had been missing during the Sienna era. "Like I'm finally doing something that matters." "Your father would be so proud," I told him. "He always said success wasn't about money or status, but about going to bed each night knowing you'd done something worthwhile." Drew nodded, emotion flickering across his face. "I've been thinking about him a lot lately, wondering what he would have made of the person I almost became." "He would have loved you regardless," I said. "That's what parents do. But he would have been happier with the man you're becoming now." We ate on the back porch, watching twilight settle over the garden. Drew told me about his plans for the school's media center, reading challenges, technology integration, community storytelling events. "You know," he said, "they're expanding the community center too. Vernon mentioned they're looking for a children's literacy coordinator to work with the school." I laughed. "He mentioned something similar to me this morning." "You should do it," Drew said seriously. "You were always the best at getting kids excited about books. Remember how you used to do different voices for all the characters?" "I'm pretty sure my Gruffalo voice terrified half the toddlers in town." "Maybe," Drew grinned, "but they never forgot the story." As darkness fell, we moved inside to the living room, where photo albums chronicled our shared history, Drew's childhood, school events, quiet celebrations, and everyday moments that, strung together, made up a life of meaning, if not glamour. "I'm sorry, Mom," Drew said suddenly, turning to a page showing him at his high school graduation, my arm around his shoulders. "For everything with the wedding, but also for the last few years, for getting so caught up in appearances that I forgot what you taught me about, what really matters." "You found your way back," I said simply, "because you were brave enough to show me I was lost." He closed the album gently. "Not everyone gets that chance." Later, after Drew left with promises to return for Sunday dinner, I sat on my porch watching stars appear one by one. The Vernon Ellis check remained uncashed in my desk drawer, a reminder not of victory but of valuation, of finally understanding my own worth. My phone chimed with a text from Marla. "Vernon told me you're taking the library job. Good for you." "Only part-time," I replied. "It's not about the hours. It's about starting a new chapter. A new chapter. Not a dramatic reinvention or a glossy transformation, but a quiet continuation of a life lived authentically." I thought about Linda's letter, about Drew's new path, about Vernon's community center expansion. How standing up for myself had created a series of ripples, touching lives beyond my own in ways I couldn't have anticipated. The autumn air carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, simple pleasures that no Instagram filter could enhance. I'd lost a daughter-in-law I never truly had, but regained a son I'd thought was slipping away. I'd spent money intended for an elaborate wedding on something with lasting community value instead. Most importantly, I'd remembered my own worth, not as a checkbook or a background figure, but as a person deserving of basic respect and dignity. Some losses, it turns out, are really beginnings in disguise.